JavaScript URI errors, Uniform Resource Identifier Errors. That is what URI stands for. And URI error occurs if you use illegal characters in a URI function. Oftentimes, uh, due to the way we might be, thinking or processing it through in our program or in our project, we sometimes can use an illegal maybe characters or something that is not easily identifiable by JavaScript in our code. And in instances like this, we will run into what is called the URI error. And that happens when you use an illegal characters in a URI function. Now, for example, let's take a look at this example in the code editor. So here we are talking about URI errors. URI errors. So this is a method through which you can decode URI characters, but it's not all characters that can be decoded with it. So let's look at this. So let's say I pass the method here, decode URI. I might just pass something like percent. I need to wrap this in code. So I want to pass it like a string. Now, if you look at this, you can see the error name is showing URI error. And then the value is showing what? Is showing undefined, which means that this character is not acceptable to be passed as a URI characters in our code. So if you have things like this, you will run into a URI error issue because the decode URI method cannot pass this character. It cannot process this character, and that is why it is returning the URI error that you can see on the screen. So moving on, let's talk about the JavaScript syntax errors. A syntax error occurs when the code violates JavaScript grammar rules. Now, in English, there is something called grammar. It's basically a rules of language. The same thing is applicable when working with JavaScript. It has its own rule. When you miss that rule, then expect a different result or no results at all. So when your code violates JavaScript rule, that is when you run into syntax error. For example, say you want to declare a variable and you do something like this. You want to declare a variable with first name, and then you now do something like this. Now you can see it. You can see that there's already a red squiggly line shown under the closing bracket. Why? Because this particular function expects an opening and closing bracket. But if you omit one and put the other, then you run into syntax error. Or you have something like this and say, let test equals math dot rand, and you do something like 4.7. But you didn't close it. You just put your braces like this. Now you can see. You can even see that my editor is suggesting the right way this syntax should go. So these are examples of syntax error. And when you run into syntax error, your program or whatever it is, it will not run. It will not continue. So let's take a look at another one. So let me make this. Say John Blake. Now, document does get eliminated by hide. Now, nothing is showing in my output here, but you notice something that Here I'm getting unexpected token. This closing bracket, it has no corresponding opening bracket. We are talking about JavaScript syntax error, syntax error. You stop the program and execution will not continue. So when you run into a syntax error, it will halt your program, which means it will stop your program. And execution in that scenario or in that situation will not continue. So syntax error are not catchable. These are things that you should note. Now, syntax error are not catchable by try and catch code block. So if you use try and catch code block, you will not detect a syntax error that way. And then syntax error happens before runtime. It's not when you are running your program, but before you run your program, that is usually when the syntax error happens. Now, let's look at this example again. So I want to use the try catch code block to let you see that this does not catch syntax error. Now you can see that there's already an error in the code. Now, if I move on and say, okay, error dot name plus space plus error dot description. Now document dot get element and ID. Now look at this. Nothing is showing inside my output, but you can see this console uncaught syntax error, missing closing bracket after argument list. So it's basically talking about that this bracket should come before this colon inside it. So if I remove this now, you should see my code. Even as it is now, it's not showing anything. Let me revert as to why it is not showing anything. And that is because of what I have here. I use ERR and not ERRO. Yes, I think this way, error name and error description, from called syntax error. So we can see what this is doing. So syntax error are not catchable by try and catch code block. So you need to be very, very careful when working with JavaScript, especially if you have an editor that supports and help you to catch these bugs or this syntax error early. So it allows you to, stop wasting time trying to figure out what could have gone wrong in your code.